anybody can say, well, not yet. I'm not going to do it yet. I'm not going to do more writing yet. I've got to keep doing all these other things first. But I just think at some point you have to say, no, I'm going to prioritise what I like to do with my time. And that's what I do now. I prioritise my writing, and I prioritise my children. I probably should have said that the other way around.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Conversation with your host, Nadine Matheson. As always, I hope that you're well and I hope that you had a good week. I had a very, very good week. Can I tell you why? The reason why I had an excellent week is because it was announced that my book, The Kill List, is on the long list for the Theakston's Oh Peculiar Crime Novel of the Year award. And I'm ecstatic. I'm overjoyed. I can't think of any other adjectives to describe my joy, but I am very, very happy. It's just really cool to know that your book has been well received and it's been recognised and it's validation, which is kind of weird. Validation's a weird thing because you shouldn't need an award. Not to say I don't want to win, because I'd like to, but you shouldn't need an award to validate you as a writer. I mean, the fact that I've got books out there and you can buy them wherever you choose to buy them, that readers like them and they respond to the books and the characters and the plot, and they email me and DM me and they talk about it amongst themselves and they create amazing art and social media posts about the book and they discuss it in their book clubs and they create YouTube videos about it and have hour-long discussions about your books. I mean, that is validation enough. And actually, that is really, really cool when you do get tagged in and it's just three women on YouTube spending an hour discussing The Jigsaw Man. And oh my God, what are the names? Let me think. I'm going to give them a shout out. They're called Over Our Dead Bodies. And they did this brilliant hour-long discussion, their book club discussion about The Jigsaw Man. So all of that is really cool, but it is also really cool to be nominated. So I'm very, very pleased. And as I said, it's my podcast, so I can self-promote all I like. I'm on the long list, but it would be amazing to be on the short list. And if you read The Kill List and you enjoyed The Kill List, and if you haven't done so already, please vote. Please vote for me. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. So just head to the show notes, click on the link. You can watch a little video from me where I'm being interviewed about how it feels to be nominated and be on the long list. And then you can vote for my book. So thank you very much in advance. Now let's get on with the show. This week, I'm in conversation with author Elissa Soave. And Elissa Soave is the author of the book Ginger and Me. And her new book, The Graffiti Girls, is out now. And in our conversation, Elissa and I talk about why you must prioritise your creative passions, the surprising inspiration behind The Graffiti Girls, and why you should give every book a chance. Now, as always, sit back, we'll go for a walk and enjoy the conversation. Elissa Soave, welcome to The Conversation.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm very happy to have you here. Right, Elissa, I never normally ask the where do you get your inspiration question from, because sometimes I feel as writers we're like, well, I don't know, it's random, it came to me in the shower. But what I wanted to ask you is, why did you want to tell the story of the Graffiti Girls? I'm not asking if any of the characters are you, maybe they are, but why did you want to tell the story?
Well, the Graffiti Girls, and it's funny, that question, where's your inspiration from? People think that must be such an easy question to ask writers.
It's not.
But really, we're like, oh my God, please don't ask me that. You might have seen my face falling there. But actually, with Graffiti Girls, I think I can pinpoint exactly where I got the idea, which is quite unusual, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the themes of it, the way women are treated, particularly as they get older, the inequalities in society. These are themes that I've been thinking of, for a long, long time. But as to how to sort of address those themes in a novel, I remember that I was sitting outside the Tannockside Miners Welfare Club, which appears in the book, actually. And I was waiting for one of my children to come out. And where my car was parked, there was a wall at the side, and there's a main road goes by the wall. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that would be a great place for graffiti, because all the cars that are coming by would be driving right by it. You'd get so much traffic. And so then I started to think, well, what would I write if I was going to write graffiti? And of course, it would be things like women are better than men, end of, which is the kind of thing the women write in the book. And then I thought, well, actually, I could do that, but via fiction. So I went home that exact same night, and I wrote the scene, which appears in the book now at the very start, where the women have their first sort of graffiti mission, and they write on the walls of the Miners' Welfare Club things like, that women are not treated well and this sort of thing. And but after I'd written that, I thought, well, what kind of women, I mean, what would have to happen to you that you'd be prepared to break the law and, disrupt your life in this way by scrawling graffiti on the wall? And I thought, well, what I could do is go back to the backstory of each woman and explain why they had hit this point at their 40s or in their 40s, where they were prepared to say, this is not right. We're not happy with this anymore. And so that, of course, gave me my structure for the novel, which is in 4 parts where, each woman has their backstory, and this is why I'm doing it, and this is why I'm doing it. So in the end, it turned out to be quite an easy book to write. In fact, at some points where I was writing the dialogue between the women, my fingers literally could not up on the keyboard by all the things that I really wanted to say. So the inspiration for Graffiti Girls really came quite easily and was actually written quite easily as well.
I was thinking, it's just the lawyer in me when you're talking about graffiti, and I was thinking, that's just criminal damage. Like, you can't do that. But that's the legal side of it. It's criminal damage. You're committing an offence. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then
you have to. I beg your pardon.
No, go on.
I was going to say, so you'd have to feel quite strongly about what you wanted to say to be prepared to do that. And also, I think initially it was just going to be one woman, but then I thought, no, because if it was me, right, I would need my wee posse of friends around me to, build up some Dutch courage and make me, you can do it, Elissa, come on. So I made the women like friends since school, having grown up all the way together. So they're very close, and they each rely on each other not to tell anybody that they're the ones who did it.
Well, other than the criminal damage, you're breaking the law side of me. The other side of me is always when I'm driving, and if I'm approaching like a bridge in the railway bridge, and you'll see the graffiti on the railway bridge, and I'm always thinking, how? All over the flyover on the motorway. I'm like, how did you even get up there? And it's a different level of courage to. One thing to scrawl graffiti on the wall, you're displaying your art, but to climb up onto, I don't know, I'm saying climb up, I have no idea how they get up there.
Well, my Graffiti Girls don't really do that. They have one excursion where they bring ladders and they do go quite high in the wall, and they use like massive big spray cans to make a real big mural. But generally speaking, they're looking at local buildings, and they're more intent in getting the message out to other women than they are in the sort of the artwork or the quality of the art of their graffiti. Yeah. That's not really part of their mission.
They're not to be artists.
Not really, no.
Do you think, right? Like in the era that we're in, and I'm saying post Me Too. Do you think that this book would have like a different message post Me Too in comparison to if you'd written it maybe, I don't know, 15 years earlier?
Honestly, when I think back to myself growing up, so, let's say in the 80s and 90s, I don't think terribly much has changed for women. And I think that's really sad to say, but it's the same sort of issues that I was concerned about. I was also a law student, as a young law student, that I think women are concerned about today. In fact, if anything, the epidemic of male violence against women, I would say, has just got worse. So I think it's the same issues. Probably me now as an older woman, I'm seeing it from their point of view now. I'm probably thinking more about how older women are viewed in society as opposed to the challenges that are faced by younger women. And I think they are slightly different. But in general, I think depressingly, things have not got better for women. And I don't really think the tenor of the messages would change.
Yeah. I feel like in some sense, it feels like it's going backwards a bit.
I'll tell you one thing that I do notice, which I think is, I don't remember this as a younger woman, but maybe I just was not aware of it. I don't know. But I do feel as though there's a lot more attempts being made to sort of split women up. For example, you quite often see why women with children are not being nice enough to women without children, younger women not being particularly supportive of older women, and all this sort of thing. Whereas I just feel don't do that. Stick up for your fellow women. Stick together. That is the answer, because together we're a powerful force. Well, of course they want to fractionalize us. What better way to take away the power?
With your second book, The Graffiti Girls, because I wrote a Substack article last week. I wrote a Substack article last week, and I was talking about that moment when I first met my agent, and he asked me, we talked about the first book because he's got the manuscript. Then he asked me if I had what my second book was about, and literally I hadn't even been thinking about second books, and I just plucked this idea that was kind of floating around in my head. But how did you see your career? Did you see your career as a writer? I mean, that's what I'm asking.
I just think I was so thrilled and delighted to have one book out. I couldn't quite believe it. But also, I think I don't know if you felt this way, but after you've had one book published, it sort of validates any ambition that you've had. It sort of makes you feel like, well, maybe I am quite good then, maybe I can write. And I think it's sort of, I certainly didn't have any, I wasn't nervous about writing more books after Ginger and Me, which was my first novel. If anything, I was like, oh, here I go then. I felt as though, the gate had been opened and I was now had permission to write whatever I wanted.
But then this is what I was going to ask you actually about, talking about validation as a writer, because you won the Prima Donna Prize in 2019, and then you did bloody Scotland, Pitch Perfect as well. So wasn't those two events, didn't that feel like validation, or did you feel like, okay, it's just like a little like tap on the back, like well done?
Prima Donna in particularly felt like validation. I think that was the sort of quite the turning point for me. I'm not lacking in any self-confidence. I never have been. So I'm not going to pretend, that I have. But certainly in terms of writing, I did think as an older working class Scottish woman, I thought I might meet barriers there. And I think Prima Donna, really what it did for me was say, no, if the work is good enough, there's room for it. So I think I try not to focus on myself or my background. I try to focus on, this is the writing. I'm just going to make the writing as good as I can make it. Tell the stories that I want to tell, that I think people will be interested in, and just keep going, just keep writing.
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking about this as well last week. That because I think in America now, because we're recording this we're in February, so in America it's Black History Month, and ours in the UK is October. And I was saying, like, last week was the first time I think in 6 years where I'd sat on a panel, and it was all women of colour, all talking about crime fiction, and it was just us talking about our books. It wasn't there because it was just it's a Black History Month, so now let's have a special. And I think it's so. I don't think some people realise how important it is just for writers just to be on a panel just for themselves and talking about their work without it being some form of, I don't know, initiative.
And also in terms of what you write, I mean, I know that a lot of working class writers say that you're expected to write stories about sort of quite miserable working class families, because this is what working
Trauma.
class
I
life
call
is.
it trauma porn.
But actually, I mean, that is not my experience of working class life. Working class life to me is about community and about people working together. There's loads of laughter, loads of different life experiences. So that's what I'm writing about. I'm not interested in writing about, misery.
Did you were you ever worried about that though? Like being pigeonholed as the working class writer?
Honestly, I never thought about class one way or the other for years. So, like I say, I studied law, and when I got to university to study law, it was at a time where you got full grants, full maintenance grants, if you needed them,
nice.
right? Yeah, but not alone, right? People can't believe this now. Not alone, a full maintenance grant, right? So that is why, or how, someone like me from a working class family, no way could my parents have afforded tuition or to keep me around. They just couldn't have, right? So I was able to go to university to study law for those reasons, right? It was a time where the policies allowed it. So having had then access to, the most middle class of professions for years, I never didn't even think about, well, I'm working class, but I'm going to have access to this. It wasn't until I started to see myself described as a writer, as a working class writer. I thought, oh, am I? and I do it myself now, because I think, well, it's me, I'm the working class. But it's not really something that I think about on a daily basis. And I certainly don't think about I want to represent all working class. I just don't. That doesn't cross my mind when I'm writing.
No, I don't think you're not the only one, because I always say the same thing about being. Even now, I find it difficult to even say the word, and they say, "Oh, you're the children of immigrants," and I'm like, "Well, I didn't feel like we were immigrants, because my mum and dad are just my mum and dad, and our family's just our family. And yes, we are Grenadian, but I just didn't feel, I wasn't made to feel like other in my home until later on. It's like, oh, you're the children of immigrant. You're all of a sudden I'm Black, British, Grenadian. I'm like, am I? I did not know. And people start putting these tags onto you, and even like being working class. Like I never thought of being working class, but I suppose if you to fill out the box, I'll tick all the boxes. But then, as you said, I then work in a very middle class profession. So it's weird. It's a very weird thing.
There was a brilliant Asian writer, and I can't remember her name. I've got her book actually. Pretty Teenager, okay. Right? Now, she was speaking at Prima Donna, and I just thought this was fascinating. So before she got her agent, she'd sent off her book, which is brilliant, and sent a synopsis, a wee bit about herself. And the agent came back to her and said, "Oh, well, we've already taken on one Asian writer, so
no."
And she said, she said to the audience, she said, "What is it, like one in, one out? Is this how it works?" And I thought, wow, I cannot believe in this day and age, this is what people are up against. I know, look at your face, it's amazing, isn't it?
I'm not supposed to have dead sound. Just empty sound.
She was so inspiring. She really was. Just about writing generally, about just sticking to your guns and not feeling that you have to, change yourself or what you write in order to be successful. And what even is successful when it comes to writing? Isn't it writing the best stories that you can write?
And I remember when I sat down with my agent, who I have now, we had that conversation. Like we were talking about, I'm selling your book. It wasn't I've got a Black author on my author list, or let me have one. It was just about, it's a good book and we're going to sell the book, and that was the conversation. And to be honest, that's the only conversation that I want to be having. It's like, it's a good book and we're going to sell it, and let's see what happens. But I'm so stunned. Like if you'd said that in, I don't know, 1962, then maybe.
Yeah, no, this would have been maybe 2020, I think, the festival, 2020 or 2021. It was really inspiring. In fact, the Prima Donna Festival generally is very inspiring. If you get a chance to go, you should go. Honestly, it really makes you feel that anybody can do anything, as long, if you've got the story and you're willing to work at it. Anybody can become the writer that they want to be.
Because then, there will be so many people, irrespective of what race they are, ethnicity, gender, anything, or what class they are, who will, they have their dreams of doing whatever it is, being creative. And then they hear someone say that to them, oh, well, we've already got one of this or one of that. And they'll just feel like there's no room for them. And they'll just, that just stifles any ambition that they have.
Absolutely. And I feel it's even more than that. I mean, across the industry generally, it's when you see the same names over and over again on, for residencies, whatever it may be. I think that has the effect of stifling a diversity, but B, anybody who might want. I mean, I might even be thinking about it. If you don't see a variety of people, if you don't see different people from different backgrounds, different areas with different ambitions, you don't have any feel that, well, you can also fit in. Then you feel as though, well, I'm not like that, so that's obviously not for me.
And I think that it doesn't even just apply to the arts. I think it just applies to anything, like any profession. I think if I hadn't seen Black lawyers myself, then maybe I probably would have been like, maybe not. But that wasn't the case. Also, I probably watched too much American law shows. And they always had.
That's the same, actually, yeah. Oh, that's so glamorous. Oh, yes.
It was so glamorous. That's what I wanted, the glamour. Then I found myself in the magistrate's court and there's no glamour whatsoever. Elissa, can I ask you this question? And I kept reading it and I kept thinking, is this a mistake? You didn't go to law school at 16, did you?
Yeah, I did. I know, crazy, isn't it?
Crazy. At 16?
Yeah.
How?
Well, I mean, really stupid, right? So I was, first generation in my family to go to university, and I had the exam results that I needed, and I was offered a place. Now, I think, if that had been my child now, right, knowing what I do now, having experienced the university system, I would say to my child, no, wait, 16's far too young. You'd be at least 18. But of course, I didn't. My parents were just so delighted and thrilled that with this, achievement in inverted commas, that I went. And it just was such a mistake because I never enjoyed studying law. It was the wrong subject for me. And B, I just was just too young. I just between 16 and 18, I think is a big, big difference in maturity levels.
There is. I always say, I always say for myself at 16, at the time, you think you know everything and you think you're an adult and no one can tell you any different. And then, but you said the jump from 16 to 18, there's so much growth in that short space of time. That even looking at my 18-year-old self and looking at my 16-year-old self, I'd be like, what are you on about? Just behave yourself. But then again, even looking at 21 to 18, you're like, you knew nothing.
And you think you're so mature, don't you? Well, I'll tell you a funny story, and you can edit it out if it's not appropriate. But when I went to law school, so I was 16, right? Now, I had been brought up Catholic, very sort of, not worldly wise in any way. And I remember we were being taught about, it was really just a side note, bestiality, right? The crime of bestiality. I did not know what that was. I could not work out what is the animal? Where is the animal in all this? What? So, I mean, that is just one example of why, I just was too young to be there.
You couldn't even go and watch a movie. You couldn't even watch The Exorcist.
No, and in their matric card. So I had stars all around my matric card to indicate that I wasn't old enough to have alcohol.
It was.
So,
And you know what, look, I didn't do law at uni. I did American studies and history.
all
So
right.
I didn't do, yeah, so I didn't do I did the conversion course. I would have been 21, 20, yeah, 21, 22
I
when I
think
did the
that's absolutely the
conversion.
right age.
Yeah, and yeah, looking back at it now, I'm glad I didn't study it at uni, spend 3 years
Yeah.
studying law. I'm glad I just did that 1 year. And it's an intensive course, but saying that, it's so intensive. And to be studying that at 16.
But you know, in hindsight, there were benefits. So, like I say, I came from a working class background. You know, for somebody who's not bothered about it, I've mentioned it quite a lot, haven't I? But anyway, so when I went to uni, a lot of the people who were there, they knew a lot more about the legal profession and how things worked than I did. And the reason why, of course, is because they came from families of lawyers. So their dads,
Yeah.
and in the 80s, you know, it was their dads rather than their mums. Their dads were lawyers, and they knew they knew people how they could, you know, how they get a traineeship and. But this all went over my head. I didn't, you know, I just was so naive. I didn't really get that, you know. So in a way, that was good.
But in a way, though, I don't think you could have had that experience at 16 or had it at 18 or had it at 21, 22. Because even when I've been teaching in a law school, and I remember, I don't know how it worked out this way. I was teaching a class on it was a Friday afternoon class I had, and everyone in that group you would probably describe them as coming from like a working class background, which was unusual for the law. I say unusual for the law school because actually the law school had the whole spectrum, you know,
Yeah.
very, very upper class. This is the next step before you become a solicitor or a barrister. But that group
Right.
they were literally like, it was just full of working class students, all living
Brilliant.
all living locally. But I remember there was this one guy, he came up to the end of the class and he said to me, you know, his first week there, he wanted to leave because it's his first time. You know, he grew up in East London, he went to university in East London, he lives in East London, and then it's his first time going to law school like this and being surrounded by, I say, upper and middle class people, and he felt intimidated by that. And he says only when he saw me teaching, and he was like, "Oh, there's someone like
That's
me, and
brilliant. You see?
sounds like me, yeah." And you
Representation.
need that, yeah. You so need representation. But I'm saying, but
Absolutely.
whether you were 16 or 21, he still didn't have that knowledge of, okay, how does this law thing actually work? How does it work as a career? You know, what do I need to do? Who do I need to speak to? Because he didn't have those people, and I didn't have it either. You didn't have those people around
I
you.
honestly naively thought it's all about the exam results.
No.
So I knew that I was going to do well in the exams, right? I was good at exams. I was very studious. Like I say, I was very quiet. I was very studious. Never went out. So my whole life was all about, you know, studying. So the exams were going to be fine for me. I was naive enough to think whoever does well in the exams, they are the ones who are going to go on and get the best traineeship and you know, and then do well in the profession, not realizing it's all about networking and who you know.
Yeah.
And in Scotland as well, a lot of it, oh, actually, you know, I won't even say that. I was going to say it's a wee bit to do with religion as well, depending on which city you are interested in working in. But I won't focus too much on that.
So, Elissa, we've been talking about the law. We could talk about the law all day. But when did you know? Actually, yeah, when did you know that you could write, and when did you realize that you wanted to write?
Do you know, for somebody who came so late to writing, so I started writing in my mid-40s, right? But I can remember being at school and loving writing and really loving reading, loving books, and always thinking, I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to be a writer. But you know the thing that I didn't do? I didn't do any writing. So I just did not do any writing. So in the back of my mind, I was always going to be a writer.
Yeah.
But you know how things get in the way, you know, you have your career, then you have your family, and but still at the back of my mind, still even in my 40s, I was thinking, I'm going to write eventually. And then I thought to myself, well, you know, Elissa, if you don't actually put your money where your mouth is and do some writing, you know, that just will never happen. And I really, thought, I cannot give up this dream. I don't want to give up this dream. So I joined a writers group, which honestly was the best thing I could have done, because suddenly you're surrounded by people who, are just as interested in writing and characters and plot and as you are. And in my case, having no academic background in writing, I just learned so much from other people. This business like show don't tell and all and the story arc and all this business. I didn't know anything about that. Genuinely did not have a clue. So for me, I was just, taking it all in, what all these other writers in this group were telling me, taking all the feedback, taking all the critiques, and really the best thing that I could have done. And I knew, because I was getting good reactions for the short stories that I was bringing to the club. So I felt as though, that there is something there. There's something to work with.
Listeners, it's time for a very short break. If you're enjoying this conversation with Nadine Matheson and want to help keep the podcast going, why not buy me a cup of coffee? Your support goes such a long way in keeping these conversations flowing. Just check out the link in the show notes. It's such an important step, because I remember going to a writing group, and it was just, I think it was just like on a Tuesday. It was just on a Tuesday evening, and it was on top of a cafe. And I don't know what made me go. I thought, no, I'm going to go. And I went, and that first moment, and you were supposed to just write on your own for the first hour. So, sat on your, and I'm not a working in a cafe sort of person.
No,
so that was a bit, no, it's just, that was, yeah, it's just, I can't move. So that was a bit of okay, I'll do this. I'll write for an hour. And then after that, everyone got together and they spoke about their work and they shared their work and critiqued their work. And that was the first time I had people reading my stuff. And I was like, oh my God.
You cringing?
Because you don't know. You're writing stuff and inwardly you might think, okay, it feels like a good idea. And there might be a character who just sings to you. There's someone you feel attached to and you can hear their voice. But I didn't know whether or not I could actually write a full novel. And it's the same thing. I didn't know that, you're not supposed to have 3 points of views in one chapter.
I know. Well, what's POV? What is POV?
Yeah, yeah, there are 3, I'm switching 3 times. But you need that. However you get it, that first exposure, that first time someone critiquing your work, you need it.
See, that's a great attitude to get in with, and that's the attitude I went in with. That I will take on board whatever whatever people are telling me. But I did notice that actually it tends to be more men who come in and they think, "Wait, do you see my masterpiece? Wait, do you see what I've got here?" And they're so unwilling to take on board any feedback. And I think, why are you even here? You have to go, I think, with the mindset of I'm here to learn. I'm not, I haven't, and that also was news to me. So I used to think, well, you write a piece and either the piece or the story, either it works or it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
I did not appreciate that by the time you're reading a story, it's gone through about, 50 billion drafts. And so you can start off with a story. It's not that great, but if you keep working at it and taking on board feedback and changing it to suit, it will get better. And I think that's, I always say to new writers, don't expect to go in and it's perfect. You will get feedback, and you have to be prepared to listen to it and accept it. You're not brilliant from the word go.
I know.
Nobody is, I don't think.
I know, but I like to think I am, which is why I got annoyed with myself last night, because I'm planning a book, and I'm doing the outline for my agent, and it's just the outline. It's not the full book.
I think the outline's hard to do.
It is hard to do. Which, I mean, I can accept it being hard to do, but then I think why I was getting annoyed with myself, I was like, it's not perfect. It's not right. And I had to say to myself, Nadine, it's just the outline. It just needs to know what the story is.
Exactly.
You don't need to know what happens in chapter 86 because you don't even know what happens in chapter 12. Yeah. But you just, I think, so go on.
I was going to say, when I first started writing, that was one of the things that stopped me a lot. So I've tried to write a novel, and if I couldn't get the first chapter to be perfection, as far as, as I was concerned, perfection as I wanted it, I would just give up. And you have to be prepared to write a really crappy first draft and then have something to work with, don't you? It's not going to come out completely perfect first time.
No, you're right. Because imagine I was telling myself last week when I was getting annoyed with myself, I was like, well, I'm just going to go on LinkedIn. I'm going to start looking for a job because I don't know what I'm playing at. Like the other 4 books I've written it's all just been a fluke because I was getting so annoyed with myself until I had a word with myself, and then my friend had a word with me, and I was like, yeah, it's just.
And how do you do it then? Do you write it yourself and then get somebody to have a look at it and tell you that, or do you just do it yourself and think you're happy with it?
I just do it myself. I start writing it, get annoyed with myself, have a moan, throw a little bit of a tantrum, and then I have to have a word with myself. Oh, there's one of my friends I will message and she'll be like, it doesn't need to be, you just want it to be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And then I just carry on once I've got.
And then have a wee glance at your 4 books that are already published on the.
Yeah, that's what I have to do.
Yes, come on.
Look at it and go, like, you've done this before. What surprised you most, Elissa, about the publishing industry once you were in it? What was the most surprising, apart from the 500 drafts that you have to do with your book?
Do you know what I'm going to tell you? That's what I was going to say. Just how many times you have to work and work and work. In fact, my first editor, she's left now, but I really loved her, Katie Seaman. I sent her, and she still laughs about this. So I sent her what I thought was going to be the book, right? And I got this message back to say something along the lines of, I'm so looking forward to working with you. There's so much work to do. And I was in the background thinking, I've already written the book. I don't know what else I can possibly have to do. And that was about draft, or, one of about, I'd say about 15 maybe. And it really did change throughout the course of the editing process. So I think that really was my biggest surprise. And also, I do see a lot of sort of negative stuff about the publishing process, maybe more the industry than the process. I see a lot of negative stuff online, but honestly, that's not really been my experience. So I've been quite pleasantly surprised by how positive I found everything. I haven't had, negative experience the way other people seem to have done online.
Yeah, I think that's the difference, isn't it? Now that you've said it, there's a difference between the industry and the process. Because I think if you get caught up in what's going on in the industry, and you do get caught up in the various, how many WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups that you might be in, you can just, there's been sometimes I've just closed the group because I'm like, I can't take it anymore because it's so negative about the industry, which is completely different to the publishing process. I'm not saying they're not warranted, because sometimes you're like, I agree with you 100%, but for your own peace of mind, sometimes you have to remove yourself away from that. Otherwise, you won't write your book.
Definitely. I mean, you can spend all day on Twitter, scrolling through and going down all sorts of rabbit holes. And sometimes, if your writing time's limited, it's just a waste of your writing time.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, but I don't know if you've already answered it, because, you are a lawyer and you've been in law since 16. How important is it to have this other side to you, so to have this creative side? Because I always call them the baby lawyers. I always say to the baby lawyers at the end of the course that I teach them, is like, make sure you got something else other than this. Like, they need to have another part of you other than law, because you don't want it to be all consuming and then you're burnt out. So make sure you have something else. So how important is it to have this creative side?
Well, it's funny, as I was saying to you earlier on before we started recording, I was quite ill last year. And although, of course, there's lots of downsides to that, one of the positive things about it is that it does make you reassess what is important to you. And when there's a possibility that your time is going to be limited, I mean, of course, we're all got a finite amount of time here, right? But we manage to sort of ignore that most of the time. That's how we manage to survive. But if you're sort of brought face to face with it, it does make you think, well, how do I want to spend my precious time? And for me, I realised, actually, I want to spend more time writing, because that is what makes me happy. And, anybody can say, well, not yet. I'm not going to start. I'm not going to do it yet. I'm not going to do more writing yet. I've got to keep doing all these other things first. But I just think at some point you have to say, no, I'm going to prioritise what I like to do with my time. And that's what I do now. I prioritise my writing, and I prioritise my children. I probably should have said that the other way around, actually. I prioritise my children and who I want to spend my time with. And I think law as a profession, or any other profession that you do because you have to do to make money, and we all have to do that. That's fine, but don't always put off because you might come to the conclusion one day or the realization one day that actually I don't have the time now to do what I really, really wanted to do, and I think that is very sad.
Yeah. I don't know who said it. There's some quote, and I think sometimes it can sound it's a bit glib, but it's very true. It says, the best time to start was yesterday, but the second best time to start is now. And it's true. And I think, and I also think sometimes that a lot of people, they feel like they need to have everything in place first before they can move on and start taking on whether it's their creative project or their new business. They feel like they need to have everything set in place. And sometimes you just have to just start and then just see how it goes. I mean, that's just my view on it.
It's not even really about, I can't leave this career till I have another career. It's about being creative is just good for you. It's good for your mental well-being. It's good for you to be thinking about, creatively about the way you see the world and your place within the world. That all sounds very poncy. I suppose really what I mean is you should think about how you spend your time, because it is finite.
Yeah.
Sorry to bring everybody down.
No. No, but I do think it's true. I think that's probably why, why I do say to the baby lawyers, have something other than this. Have something else to focus on, be creative, have fun, enjoy life, even if it just means just like doing puzzles. Do your puzzles.
Just whatever brings you joy.
Yeah, whatever brings you joy. I think that's the most important thing. Whatever brings you joy. Is your family creative?
My children, you mean?
Or your children and your parents, siblings, if you have them?
No, not really. I mean, I grew up in quite a bookish household because my mum really loved reading. So she was very much, we had a mobile library that came round and she always had loads of books and she always really encouraged us to read. And she always as well encouraged me in particular, and my sisters, to be whatever we wanted to be. There was never any limits. And I think, honestly, the reason that I do feel confident in my abilities, and I'm not bothered if I'm the only working class person in a middle class set. I'm not bothered, is because my mum always told me I was the best at everything. I mean, I can see in retrospect, of course I wasn't, but I think it's a great thing to do for your children, to say, no, but you're great. Better than to say, well, you can't, that's not really our kind of thing. You can't really do that. I mean, she would never have said that to me. In fact, I can always remember I applied for a job. I was probably totally underqualified for it. But in one respect, I definitely was. But my mum said, no, apply for it. You had to speak fluent German. Now, I don't speak any German. But my mum said to me, but you speak Italian, so you can learn to speak German. And I thought, bloody right, so I can. So it won't surprise you to know that I did not get an interview for said job where I had to be fluent in German. I think I put something in the application form along the lines of willing to learn.
I just love it that, well, you speak Italian, so yeah, you'll be fine.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Same thing. You'll be absolutely
show
fine.
An aptitude. But that's what I do for my children. I say to my children, you can be anything you want. It doesn't matter what they tell me that they're interested in. I'll just try and encourage it because, for one thing, it's probably a fleeting thing. But for another thing, why not? I always take the view, if not me, then who? Who, if not me? Who's better than me? And of course, there will be loads of people who are better than me, but that doesn't matter. It shouldn't stop you trying.
No, you always say you have to tell yourself a story. And if you tell yourself the story, I am the best thing that walked out of this house today, then you tell yourself that story and you run with that story. Elissa,
Absolutely.
what was it like the moment that you not this book, not Graffiti Girls, we'll talk about that, but Ginger and Me. What was it like that moment when you had your book in your hand for the first time?
Oh, phenomenal, phenomenal. Absolutely loved it. Could not believe it. Couldn't believe that my name was on the cover of a book.
Mm.
Completely even now, when I go into Waterstones and I see the book there, I'm just so thrilled and delighted. Don't take it for granted. I never expected it, and I'm just so delighted that it's happened. And I can see when you think about when you see online, people are so their dream is to have a book published. Yes, I can totally see why. That's how I felt, and to have it come true, it's a phenomenal thing. And it's not like you know yourself. It's not your name's on the cover, but it's not just you who's made this book. There's so many people who have contributed to getting this book, into a bookshop. So I'm always really grateful for everybody who works on the book and helps me and supports me along the way. And I do try and pay it back. I do try and pay it back to other writers, because I think it is important. Somebody said the other day, and I thought this was a great way of looking at it. You know how some people think, oh, well, I'm not going to support this writer because I don't want their book to do better than mine. But actually, if a reader finds a really great book, they're probably going to try and want to repeat that experience and look for another really, really great book. So it's no loss to a writer to support another writer. In fact, it's healthy for the book selling industry.
Exactly. And all you need to do as well is just look at people in a bookshop. Very rarely, unless someone's, I'm just going to buy a book for one person because this is their present. Very rarely are people walking into the bookshop with just one and walking out with one book. So there's room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could buy my book, you could buy your book. I've gone into the bookshop saying, no, I'm just gonna browse, and I've come out with 6 books.
Half a dozen.
Yeah, I'm like, for God's sake, this is not what I intended. But I think sometimes, and it is annoying, it's frustrating. You're like, people are like, they don't want to pay it forward because they feel like, oh, you're going to be taking my spot. No one's taking your spot. They're really not.
I know, it's rubbish. Absolute rubbish.
It's so rubbish. Oh God, I had a question. It's gone out. Oh, that's it. It popped into my head and it popped back out again. We're talking about paying it forward. What is your advice, like your number one advice that you'd give to new writers that may not necessarily be about how to write, but just in general?
I think the really important thing is to finish what you're writing. So unfortunately, what that means, and a lot of sort of new writers perhaps don't realise this, that means the very unglamorous business of getting to your desk, sitting there, and sometimes working on one paragraph, one sentence even, hour after hour after hour. But unfortunately, you cannot even begin to compete to get your place in the publishing industry unless you have a piece of work that you can say, here's what I've done. Here's my novel. So I think a lot of people, they start novels in particular, right? Because you're writing them for a long time possibly with no outcome at the end of it. So they start novels and they get to difficult parts within the process. Maybe the middle, maybe not quite sure how to end it, and then they just give up. And so what happens is this great idea that they have, and often these are great ideas, they'll only ever be a great idea. They'll never get to the bookshop because people just are not sitting down to finish them. So I always say to writers who tell me that they've got great ideas, write it. Yeah. Make sure you write it, because otherwise it will only ever be a good idea.
No, it's true. You just need to sit down. It sounds a bit like not very glamorous, not very fun. It takes away the mystique of it. But you just need to just sit there in front of your computer screen and just write.
And a sort of practical piece of advice that somebody gave me, I can't remember who, but it was brilliant. If you are struggling with a piece in your novel, maybe you need to get a character to a certain place by a certain time, and you just don't know how you're going to do that. Just put a placeholder in and move on and keep writing. So then before you know it, you've got most of your novel, and then you can go back and fill in the gaps, rather than give up on it altogether.
This is how, but this is the thing with placeholders. Sometimes placeholders become permanent, which is why the character in my book, my character Henley, her husband Rob, his name, I didn't have a name for her husband. I knew she had a husband.
Right.
I knew he was a pain in the neck, but I didn't have a name
Rob's
for
a good
him.
name for a pain in the neck.
Yeah, but Rob's also the name of my mate, Rob. And I think I'd been talking to him at the time, or I was messaging him. And I was like, oh, what should I call? I thought, I'm just gonna call him Rob as a placeholder.
Yeah.
Intending to change his name. But by the time I got to get into the book, he was
Rob to you.
Yeah, and because I was doing the book as part of the course, when the other people on my course were reading it, and I was like, I'm going to change his name. I was like, no, you can't. It's Rob. So placeholders can go against you. And then I had to call my friend Rob, I felt so bad because he's not the best character in the world. And Rob's really nice. So I didn't call him and tell him until publication day. I think the day before publication day, I was like, yeah, this character.
You spend a lot of time thinking about your characters' names then.
Yeah, I do.
Because it's important, isn't it?
It is so important. I do the whole, go online and go through the baby names and stuff. Or I'll Google what names were popular for boys in 1984. And I'll do all that because you want to get the name right.
Uh-huh. And sometimes I think you have certain associations with certain names. So if you've got a character, because I'm not, of course, I don't know your friend Rob, but for me, the name Rob does have sort of associations of being a bit Jack the Lad-ish, and perhaps not being the best character. So I think you do have names that must be to do with your experience, when you're growing up, names that you've come across. But so some names I think are definitely for good characters, and some are definitely for I don't like you, so I'm using that name.
Definitely, but then there's also the thing is that you think about the names you use because you don't want them to be a name that is one of your friends or family or someone you was acquainted to, because you don't want them coming back going, oh, is that me? And it's like, no, it wasn't you. It wasn't you. It just fitted the character. Really, it was. So, Lisa, before I go on to your last 4 questions, do you want to tell the listeners of the conversation about the Graffiti Girls? I got the proof, which I started reading, so I haven't seen the final cover. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, when we do it, yeah. So, Graffiti Girls. So, if anybody's read Ginger and Me, it's in the same sort of world, which is to say that it is contemporary, small town, working class Scotland. But this time it's set in Hamilton, which is a couple of towns along from Uddingston, which is where Ginger and Me was set. So we've got 4 women. They've been friends since school, and they always thought their lives were going to be fantastic, fabulous. But when they hit their 40s, they think, well, actually, life is not as great as we thought that it was going to be when we were at school. And so they decide that they're going to broadcast what their issues are with the world via a graffiti campaign in their local town, which is Hamilton. And they scrawl feminist slogans all over the walls of local buildings to try and highlight what the issues are. And so the book then is about the fallout from that graffiti campaign and how it affects these women's lives, but also how it affects the lives of other people who read the graffiti. So it's, again, like Ginger and Me, these are quite serious themes, inequality and the way older women are treated in society. But it's done in a humorous way. There's a lot of humour in the book to try and lighten, what these themes are.
Did you find yourself resonating with any one of the characters? Because I've got them: Amy, Carol, Lenore, and Susan. Did you resonate with one in particular, or was it just all of them? You felt something.
No, I want to be Amy, right? Because Amy has got a wisecrack for every occasion, and great comebacks to everything. Not like like when you think in the middle of the night of a great comeback, right? That's too late. Amy thinks of it in the moment, right? So I would love to be Amy, but I'm not like that. So no, I'm not really like any one of the women in particular. I think a lot of my life experience has gone into each of them, because I think that's just inevitable when you're a writer, isn't it?
I think so. Would you always set your books in Scotland, or do you think you'd move out?
do you know, I keep reading online about people who've been researching their books in Rome and things, and I think, oh God, I need to get out of Livingston. I guess I am interested in writing about working class characters from small towns, because I think that they are not represented enough in literature. In fact, not in life generally, particularly women and younger women. You know, in Ginger and Me, the two younger women. That's a demographic you don't see very often in literature.
Yeah.
I mean, never say never, but I can't. The next book, certainly after, the next couple of books, in fact, will be set in Scotland.
Oh, well, I just keep thinking if I do another book, if I do like maybe a standalone, I keep thinking maybe I just want to do it. I want to do a tour. I want to do a research tour, but I want to do it in somewhere nice. Not that London is not. I want to get on a plane. That's basically what I'm saying. I want to do research that involves me getting on a plane for 8 hours, and yeah, that's what I want to do.
Definitely, but I would like to do that sort of research, but still make it a contemporary novel, because I think historical is just far too much work.
I know, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I love history, but yeah, I commend anyone who does historical novels. I'm like, well done, you. But no,
amazing. I was talking to an historical novelist quite recently, and she was saying that the thing is, you can research for days and days and days, and you end up like with one line in your novel. I thought, well, that's not for me.
But I think that's the case. Even like for me, like writing police procedurals, and even though I did criminal law, there are still things I have to research. And it's the same thing. I've spent ages researching. I read a psychiatric report because the second book involved exorcisms. I was reading all these psychiatric reports and medical research papers about people who believed they were possessed, but it's all to do with mental health issues. And I probably used maybe half a paragraph, maybe of it scattered throughout the book. But I spent hours reading it because I go down these rabbit holes. I'm like, oh my God, it's so interesting. And I'm learning things. So, yeah.
But, that's the sort of thing. I mean, if you got it wrong, I mean, because you've got it right, readers will not notice it. That will be part of the story. But if you got it wrong, it would be very noticeable, I'm sure.
Exactly. I think so. All right. So, Lisa, are you an introvert or extrovert, or a hybrid of the two?
I think that changes with what stage of life you're at. I think when I was younger, I was very introverted. I was just into books and reading and studying. In my 20s and early 30s, I would say I became more extroverted. But now I think I'm more of an introvert. But I do think as a writer, you do need to be both, because you need to be out in the world, engaging with people in order to observe and write about it. So I think you need a wee bit of a mix of both.
I think so many writers are surprised about the fact that they have to find their extrovert side when they become a writer, because you spend so much time you're just on your own, just you and your words, and then that comes that point where you have to promote. You have to go outside. Honestly,
see, when I first won Prima Donna and I had to go on the stage to say, I thought, what? In front of an audience, in front of people, and I was really surprised by how much promotion an author is expected to do. But I always remember one agent, not the agent that I signed with, but I commented on that to her, and she said, Elissa, unless you're Hilary Mantel, you have to promote. Okay. I'm certainly not Hilary Mantel, so okay.
It's true though, isn't it? I mean, there's some authors they don't need to do anything. Their book comes out and then it goes straight. They don't need to do anything except breathe.
Well, look at the last Sally Rooney. I mean, it's sold amazingly well, of course, but I haven't seen a single interview with her on Intermezzo.
I think I don't know if I saw one. I don't know if it was a New York Times one, but then I don't know whether that was more profile or as opposed to an actual interview. Might have been more profile about her. Yeah. But there's some people they can just stay in bed. I would love to do that. Just stay in bed and let your book sell. Okay. So what challenge or experience in your life shaped you the most?
I'm going to say motherhood, because becoming a mum, I think, has shaped everything, every decision, every avenue that I've taken, every aspect of my life really has been shaped by working it around my children.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of the writing, although I sometimes get annoyed that I didn't start writing sooner, on the other hand, I think the kind of things that I write about, human relationships, our connections, what we do with our lives. I'm not sure that I think I would have had a totally different perspective if I hadn't had children. So yeah, I think being a mother.
Yeah, I always say it's never too late. It's never too late to start writing.
No,
It would be nice.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And also, what I'm saying, that's not to say that you can't write brilliant stories as a young person.
Yeah.
Of course you can. Everybody's journey into writing is different.
I wouldn't mind. I mean, if I'm honest, I wouldn't mind like being a big, massive success at like 25.
and
but I don't know. And retired but I don't know if I'd be responsible enough though. I think I needed life. Well, if I was to make it like super rich, I don't know if I'd be responsible enough at 25. I think I've had enough. I've had more than enough life experience to be, if I do ever make it super rich, from writing to be responsible.
At 25, I don't know what I would have done with any sort of success. Would have been hopeless.
Oh, which is what I'm going to ask you. Your next question: if you could go back to when you were 25 years old and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, when I was 25, I thought I was really quite old. And certainly in terms of, I know, hilarious now, in terms of career, I honestly thought at 25 that was it. Whatever career decisions I made, I just had to stick with them because I was now in my mid-20s. And for me, that having gone to study law at such a young age and realising it was I didn't really want to be in that profession, and I felt as though I was stuck with it. And I did stick with it for years and years afterwards. So I wish somebody had given me the advice, 25 is a baby. You can go and study creative writing, English literature, psychology. I mean, any of the things that I was interested in, I certainly at 25 could still have gone and done that. But I thought it was too late. I'd made my decision, my major career decision, which is crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy. It's so crazy. But then I was also thinking back when I was 18, and I could remember being in a seminar. It must be my first week at uni. So I'm in this seminar, and and it's different ages. And then someone pointed out, oh, these are the mature students. And the mature students probably only about 26, 27.
Which you probably thought was ancient at the time.
Yeah, at the time, like, oh, these are the mature students, the 30-year-olds. And looking back now, you're like, what are you banging on about?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's so crazy. So, I'll ask you one more question before we do the last one. What has your publishing or your writing journey taught you about yourself?
I think it's really taught me that the things that I am interested in and the issues that concern me are actually quite universal. So although you think your problems are unique to you, in fact, you find that lots of people, because you get lots of feedback from readers along the lines of, well, thanks for talking about that, thanks for sharing that. So I think it's sort of cemented what I knew anyway, that being a part of a community is a good thing for human beings. It's what helps us to thrive.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like one of the best messages that I like to receive are the ones where they say, I haven't read for ages. I just haven't for whatever reason, and I've picked up your book and it's got me to reading again. And you're like,
yeah. I mean, I just think the fact that anybody is taking, I don't know how long it takes to read a novel, but 10 hours maybe. So anybody is taking that time out of their life to read things that you have written. It's a compliment, isn't it?
It is. Are you someone who finishes the book even if you don't like it?
No.
Or you're DNF? Do not.
In fact, I've gone on a run where I've not finished quite a few, but my last couple of books have been fantastic. But I don't, I do talk a lot about books on Twitter X, but I would never say, oh, I hated this book, it was awful. I mean, I just wouldn't, because I know that I know what it takes to write a book. And also I know that not every book is for every person. So because I don't like it doesn't mean that it's not a good book.
No, that's true.
So if you were to look on my Twitter feed, you would have the impression that I've loved every single book that I've read. In fact, there are lots that I haven't, just haven't finished and haven't mentioned.
How far would you go though before you were like, you know what? No, I'm done. I can't take it any further.
I think I know quite early whether I'm going to like a book or not. But having said that, sometimes I do say, I'm not liking this one. And then I think, I'll just give it another night. And then by the next night, I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to get back to bed to read my book. So probably there's a lesson there, we just keep going.
Yeah, I like those moments. The frustrating moments are one where you're so invested and also you don't get the payoff at the end. You're like, what was this? Why have I spent all this time? Like you
I like it the other way around as well. Sometimes I pick up a book. So I started reading a book recently, which I hadn't realised was historical fiction. I just didn't realise. And as soon as I realised that it was, I thought, I'm not going to like this because I'm not really a great reader of historical fiction.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I could not put that book down. Things We Did in the Dark by A.J. Close, absolutely phenomenal, really phenomenal. I thought that is, I'm so glad that I didn't say historical, not for me.
Yeah,
because I would have missed a brilliant book.
You have to give things a chance. So Definitely. Finally, where can listeners of the conversation find you online?
Only on X, because I'm so garbage at social media. And when everybody was leaving Twitter and X, although I don't know if that really happened, but to go to Blue Sky, I like the idea of it, but I just can't face starting from nothing again. So I've just stuck with X. That's me.
You're there.
I'm there. That's me. So, and I quite like it, actually. I know it's got lots of downsides, but for readers and writers, I think it's a great platform, to find out about books that you may not have heard of, or you haven't, so I still think it's got value.
I tell you what I miss, because I'm not on Twitter anymore, or X, but I'm on Blue Sky. But I do miss especially on a Thursday, and you'd start to see the Happy Publication Day tweets coming out, and then you become you're aware of like what. Not really. It hasn't really taken off. You need more people. Someone needs to do it.
Yeah.
But you'd learn about what books were coming out more because of that, and learn the different types of books and discover new authors. So it's like anything. It's a slow thing. We'll have but I do miss that. I'm like, it's publication day. Let's see what books are out.
Get back on then.
No, God, I can't. Sorry, Lisa. I'm just gonna have to just send you messages like this, send you emails as a check up on you. Well, Elissa Soave, that just leaves me just to say thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, but thank you so much for being part of the conversation.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been like chatting down the pub with my pal, but without the gin.